Good afternoon, everybody. This is day 4. Is that right? Or is it day 5? I'll note it in the thing. I can't remember. Of tarot for a week, where I do not really a reading so much as kind of a reading, but mostly a story. Mostly stories. And I'm going to start out today with I'm going to use the Rosebud Tarot. Just this for the backs. This is the indie version. Okay, so, and we're going to start out with the as usual. And bear with me, man. It is allergy season here. Whew. It's been windy today. The pollinating is happening. Oh no, I just broke a card. I hate that when I do that. Where you flip up can you see it? Yeah. I'll have to get my trusty super glue. I think I've said what I do with these kind of blowouts, but I get a toothpick out, put a little super glue in there, and then use the toothpick like a rolling pin, flatten the card out, which usually works perfectly. Anyways, it's super allergy season, so I just took a pill, so I'm hoping that'll kick in here as we get going. Anyways, welcome to Star Flurry, and welcome back to those who have been here before, and welcome to any new people who are wandering by today. I appreciate it. I am on a short journey of doing 7 days in a row of tarot. And then I usually add in a story time because I can't seem to shut up. So that's welcome to my world. Glad to have you on board. So anyways, we're going to start with the as I said, the Inner Compass Oracle by Heather Hopes. One of my favorite oracles. I'm going to bring this down so you can see what we're doing here. So the first card is Guide. Second card is Explore. I kind of do these as just headers for my tarot cards. And this one says Communication. So there are our clarifying cards. And now I go to the Rosebud Tarot for the indie version is the linen version as opposed to the mass market version, which just came out on Amazon. Very reasonably priced, so yay for that. But it's kind of a, normal cardstock, so there's that. And they did change the backs, which I don't like as much as these backs, but I love this deck. I talk about it all the time. I usually call it my beloved Rosebud Tarot because I just love it. And what's unique about it to me is that I get sure I don't have any hairs of goo on here today, which seems to be my MO recently. I recorded a whole video today with a big frickin' stain on my shirt. I just looked like such a slob. I couldn't believe it. So I don't know why I didn't see it, but I ended up re-recording that as well. So it's been a busy day of recording. And I'll link it down below. It's the I did a VR to the Moon Scarab channel, Ramon over there at Moon Scarab channel, who did a tag called One Tarot Card. And it's a series of 10 really interesting questions, and then you have to select one card from a tarot deck as an answer. It's really neat. It's a neat tag. So I'll link a copy of mine down below and also link his. Okay, so what do we have here? Guide, Explore, and Communication. We give these one more shuffle. And then go. Okay, so first card is the Chariot under Guide. Interesting. And Explore, Ace of Air or Ace of Swords. And under Communication, Two of Swords. Interesting. Very interesting. Energy on the bottom, Ten of Cups. I'm never quite sure what that means, but I announce it anyways. So then what I do, of course, I forgot to bring the book over. Oh, no, I didn't. It's right here. Is I use the writing prompts that are included in the Darkside Skeleton Tarot. I was going to use this, actually, today, but it's so bright out that the cards just were, there was just too much reflection. So we went with the Rosebud instead. So, the Chariot under Guide, the Ace of Swords under Explore, and the Two of Air. I mean, I just reading this as, get your butt in gear, do some research, and go. Make a decision, go. And you're not going to make a decision as long as you remain blind to what your options are, but you need to take these options. I spoke today in the VR about, one of the questions was, what's your most what card brings you the most inspiration? And I immediately said the Chariot, and then I changed my answer. I did include the Chariot, but it was kind of like it wasn't really a runner-up. It was just, this was my first choice, but then I changed my mind. Because I think the Chariot speaks to, at least personally for me, speaks to my tendency to stay at rest in my home. I'm not agoraphobic or anything like that. I just kind of prefer hanging out here. And then, so it takes a pretty big fire under my butt to get me moving. Yeah, so we could go on and on about that, but we won't, because I'm sure I'll have plenty of things to go on about here. So let's read what the workbook says about the Chariot. So I've got this up against that. Move that. Okay, so the Chariot. The Chariot represents willpower and drive, the intense focus we need to establish our identities and stand out in important and useful ways. The Chariot archetype is the seventh encounter for the Fool, teaching us how important it is to have conviction and intensity in our lives. That's interesting to me when you combine it with the Ace of Swords and the Two of Swords. So upright, his choice of keywords are victory, willpower, intensity, drive, and control. And see, I look at the Chariot as having much more, I mean, if you take the original depiction on the RWS, there's the two sphinxes, or many have two horses or whatever, kind of going in divergent directions. And that's what I think of the Chariot as. I mean, the Chariot and the Two of Swords in many ways to me are kind of similar. You're not as blind in the Chariot, but, or are you? I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think you are, but yeah, to me, these cards are very similar. Okay, anyways, author's personal connection. A key Chariot moment took place when I decided to tell my father that I no longer wanted to play for the golf team when I was in high school. Have we read this one before? It seems like we have. I had plenty of talent, but not the love of the sport that my father had. He invested a lot of time and money into my skill, but I lacked his passion. Telling him I would not play was a moment when I asserted my will and my desire. To his immense credit, he understood that I needed to make my own choice and was proud of me for making my own decisions about the sport. Interesting. So his prompt question is, when did you have to assert yourself, forging ahead against all obstacles? I swear to God I've answered this question before. I don't know if it's been in this series of videos, though. And I'm not sure Forging ahead against all obstacles. Um, oh, God, I'm having trouble coming up with a story where I'm not repeating myself. I'm going to stop here and check my notes because I don't want to repeat a story. But I may have told this story in another video that I never posted. So I'm going to check on that. I'll get back to you. Okay, I'm back. I have not told it in this series of storytelling, but if I've told it before, I apologize in advance. I'm trying to be better at taking notes. I think it may have been during the previous stint where I tried to do this and then realized I was just all over the place. I think that's where the story I'm about to tell came in. So hopefully you never saw it because I don't think I ever posted it. So I'm going to reread the question again, which is, when did you have to assert yourself, forging ahead against all odds? Well, I almost got kicked out of college. Was it kind of, the same thing that I kind of referred to earlier in my in my VR to remote about not applying myself in high school, and I did apply myself in college. I just didn't do it the traditional way, and I got really fascinated by secondary education and its effects on young kids, of which I was one. And I was really fascinated about alternative versions of secondary education, and I was really kind of into that. I felt like I would have perhaps flourished under that, but as it turned out, my whole opinion turned around after doing a lot of research and understanding that actually the confines of high school for me actually probably kept me on an even path. Had I had more freedom to do other things, well, who knows what you're going to do, but I just don't think it would have been effective for me. I was a wanderer. I didn't have a clear focus or a clear path. Anyways, so I got involved in education and started to get fascinated by that. I think I started out as a math major, but my math classes were all being held at Pomona College, which is a college I never would have gotten into. The only reason my classes were there is because my school was associated with that 5-college consortia down there, and I realized pretty quickly it was just advanced mathematics was a little beyond my brain capacity, and so and then my love of exploring different educational things started to get in the way of that, and so I decided this is really what I wanted to study. And my school actually was very focused on people writing their own majors and studying your own path and everything, but what I neglected was to tell anybody that's what I was doing. So I actually studied, in a weird way, studied harder. I think this was my sophomore year. Studied harder in my first semester of my sophomore year than I ever had before in my life. Read more, written more. I actually wrote some articles, got them printed in alternative educational magazines, things like that. I just been, walking my own path. But when you're, with the school, while it was very, very liberal and very interested in letting you walk your own path, you had to kind of let somebody know that's what you were doing, and actually work under a teacher and, present things and get credit for what you were doing. And I had done none of that, and simply neglected the classes that I did have. I still have dreams today about, waking or kind of in the middle of the dream, realizing I never went to class and now I have a final, and if I don't do it, I won't graduate, those kind of scary things. But anyways, so I had to, so they informed me that I don't think they had actually booted me up, but they had said it's coming, and I did have options, one of which was to appeal. And so I went to my philosophy professor, who knew me well, knew I wasn't an idiot, and in fact we spent an awful lot of time bantering back and forth philosophies of education and this and that and the other thing, and it was funny in the long run. After I was getting ready to graduate, and he goes, Nancy, if you stayed one more semester, you could get a double major in philosophy. All I was missing was a kind of a senior class and thesis in philosophy. And he goes, you really should stay for that, it'd be worth it. And I was like, no, I'm out of here. I just was, I was ready to go. But that's how much, all my school classes evolved around philosophy. But anyways, so I needed an advocate, somebody who would, some professor who would, vouch for me basically and say, I worked with her and I know she's not an idiot. I don't think they use that term, but that's the term I'm using. And so I went before this panel of professors and administrators, and just had a really, like for an hour and a half, this huge Q&A back and forth about what I'd been doing, what I'd been studying, people I'd been studying, books I'd read, and I'm talking to a fairly well, I mean, this is a group of professors and administrators who are involved in alternative styles of education, so they knew their crap. And I felt like I held my own. I think that I did a fairly good job, and or at least I felt confident. Um, but I really had to prove to them that I had been doing something other than nothing, which is at this point, that's kind of what they thought I was doing. And so when it was time, they said, when it all got over with, they said, okay, you can leave. And I said, thanks. And I said, should I, is this going to be a quick decision, or is this, come back in 2 weeks or what? And they said, no, you can, go ahead and wait outside. But if we're not back to you within the hour, then, we'll get back to you. I said, okay. So I went out into the hallway and it was just a nervous wreck. And kind of sitting there, and like 5 minutes later, literally, maybe 10 at the most, but felt like 5. Out comes my advocate, Ron Rubin. I'll never forget him. He had kind of a sheepish grin on his face, and he goes, "They want to see you." And I'm like looking at him like it couldn't have been bad news because he had a good expression on his face. But so I'm like, so I walked back in, and they basically said, "You're it. We can tell what you've been doing. Your mind hasn't turned to mush yet." so, but but we're going to make some changes to how you're doing things. One of which is change my advisor, because my advisor was a science person, and science and the sciences, of which math fell into that category, and I was really no longer involved in that subject. And they put me together with a professor of education, Sue Siebel, who ended up working with me the rest of my time in college, who was great. And secondary advisor was my philosophy professor. He remained that to me the entire time. And they said, here's the deal, Nancy. We don't mind that you're studying and working harder than you ever have. What we mind is you doing it alone, which has been, geez, the hermit is my birth card. I mean, it doesn't surprise. I mean, I look back at it now and I'm like, God, what was I thinking? But whatever. So I did that. I got together with. I ended up, working with my advisor, and we got got me into classes that actually made more sense for me, and one of the best classes that I ever got into was a class called Institutional Interventions, and it was a graduate class at Claremont Graduate School. Sue knew the professor, and it was kind of a rebellious, kind of interesting class on institutional interventions. And she said, she talked to him and said, this woman might be an interesting addition to your students in the class. And so I ended up getting into the class, which was I thought, I just felt like I'd won the lottery, and I got in that class. I ended up getting an A in it. Thank you very much. And my addition to the class was the fact I wasn't jaded by 6 years of, college and 2 years of graduate school. I was coming in as a kind of a young, rebellious, just finding her own way through an institution. And so I had an advantage in that I was less jaded than most of the students in that class. And they didn't take to me right away, but eventually they did. We all got along in the end. But it was, so that was a really big win. So I'm going back to this question. So when did you have to assert yourself, forging ahead against all obstacles? And that was it. And boom, Chariot right there. Chariot right there. And my guide was my philosophy professor. Walked me right through it. And probably my big fat ego at the time, so It's tempered a little bit now, but not much. Okay, so Ace of Air, Ace of Swords. Let's see what that has to say. Ace of Swords. Okay, Ace of Swords. Time to decide. Consider a new way of thinking. Use logic regarding the situation or relationship. Upright. New thoughts and logic. Author's personal connection. Okay, so we have all have plenty of new ideas and new thoughts. For me, the repeating concrete example of this card would be each semester that I taught classes and had to come up with new material for my classes. There was always one section in my curriculum. Sorry about the road noise, but it's just a beautiful day, and I've got my slider open, and then we have these yahoos driving around in frickin' motorcycles that need mufflers. I will never get that, but whatever. To come up with new material for my classes, there was always one section in my curriculum that dealt with current events involving some new concept or thought. I remember asking my students to write an essay about their email handle, which was a new idea at the time. Well, some students were literal, first name, last name, at, first name dot, last name at, whatever. Others, were very creative, sassy girls asses at. The assignment led to a class discussion about how and why they came up with the name they chose, a clear act of the Ace of Swords. I never would have associated the Ace of Swords with something like that, but that's interesting. So his prompt is, when have you had to think of new ideas, and what were they? Oh, when did you have to think of new ideas? And what were they? Oh my God, that's a poser. That's such an interesting question. And I don't have a specific story. That's usually they just pop right into my head, but nothing's popping into my head. Interesting. I may have to get back to you on that one. I mean, I know I've had new ideas somewhere along the way. But new ideas, and what were they? Yeah, I'm drawing a blank. Sorry. So let's move on to Two of Swords. Maybe something I'll pop in when we get there. Okay, so Two of Swords, meaning be at peace with your decisions. Do not look back or revisit decisions that brought you to this point. See, I don't see the Two of Swords as that at all, but maybe that is more correct than how I think of it as being blind, a little bit blind to the choices that are in front of you. Not quite the Eight of Swords blind, which is not really blind because you can lift off that scarf. But I think of the Two of Swords as being as choices in front of you that you have not maybe thought all the way out. Upright, an important decision and need for logical resolution. Okay. So his author's personal connection. This card reminds me that decision making is an ever forward process. We make decisions and must keep moving forward. We all have decisive moments when we know a choice will have lasting consequences that will make the day stand out above and beyond most other days. I can remember a conversation I had with one of my committee members about the intended topic of my dissertation. We've had this one too, I think. I had a passion for a certain topic, but he had bad advice for a more manageable topic. I knew in that moment that complaining or completing the PhD was of greater value than sticking with my topic, with the topic I wanted, which would be a hard sell to the rest of the committee. So I made the choice to take his advice, which I'm sure helped me tremendously. So so the prompt is write about a key decision that changed the course of your life. Well, I've mentioned the story about when I was offered. So I was a floor manager, a large restaurant company in Seattle for a very long time, and GM, and waffled around in those positions for a long time, and I like them a lot. I didn't really understand what they were doing to me, in terms of what I am, and the forces that would come from being around that many people all the time. Up a little bit, sorry. And so my supervisor came to me and said, I really want you to become our director of banquet services. In effect, it was a promotion. And, and as I've said, I'm a creature of habit. I like being good at what I do. Change is tough for me. I didn't want to learn a whole new job. I was in my, God, was I 50? When did this happen? 1998. So I was probably in my 50s. I was just like, oh my God, I'm not interested in changing careers. It was just like a whole new thing. And I just wasn't convinced that was right for me. And so I turned him down. And then a year later, he came back, or 6 months later, came back and said, I really want you to do this. And to be the banquet director. And I said, do you really think, because one of the things that haunted me my entire career, at least when I was in Portland, was my ability to procrastinate, put things off, that I lacked organizational skills. And I said to my supervisor when he came to me to do this job, I said, you know that two of my weakest areas are procrastination and organization. And he just, remember, he just kind of did the whole dog, head cock, and he was like, I'm sorry, you can't function until you come into this restaurant and completely organize it and the office and our office. You can't begin your shift until you've brought the world in order. So I don't know who is telling you you're not organized, but they were full of crap. And you're not a procrastinator. If you need to do something, you do it. That's why I think you'd be great at this job. And I was like, I just had never heard that out of anyone's mouth before, ever, regarding organization and being a doer. It's just, I had not been told that my entire life. And yet this supervisor came in, not knowing me from Adam. We'd worked together for about 6 months. He picked up on these skills of mine, and that's part of the reason he wanted me to do this job. And I was like, oh. So I really mulled it over. And so I finally went back to him and I said, I'll do it if I hate it. In 6 months, I want to be back on the floor. And he goes, done. He says, you'll always have a manager position in our restaurants. So, done. So that was the deal we struck. And so I went on to do this job. And within, I think, 3, 4, 5 months, I wondered why I hadn't done this so much sooner. It changed my life. So it really wasn't my decision. Well, it was my decision in the end. He allowed me to make that decision. It was an offer, and I chose to do it with stipulations. But yeah, so it changed my life because what I'd found out in that period of time, I think I mentioned that I took a Myers-Briggs thing and was told, whether you believe in those tests or not, I'd never, ever had considered the idea that I was of an introvert status. But when I finally got out of the mayhem of the restaurant and into doing a job where I was kind of back to where I'd originally been fascinated by this work, which was one-on-one with people, planning their events, requiring putting my organizational skills to good use, and being very gratified when everything came together. I liked planning. I had no idea. I'm a planner, and I had no idea. But once I fell into this position, then all of that started to blossom, and I was like, oh, he was right. He was totally right. And it did. It changed my life, and I ended up doing that job pretty much until I left. So yeah, changed my life. So communication, explore. I'm having a hard time wrapping this up, but yeah, this one for sure was clear. the chariot and the guide. Exploring new ideas and making decisions. Making decisions based on, in my case, based on somebody else's insights into me that I had no idea I had. So maybe, I mean, maybe when I think about it, the exploring in the Ace of Air was actually my supervisor saying, I think you might be very good at this, and I think you need to explore the idea. And then I struggled and struggled with the decision, because, like I said, I turned him down the first time around. Struggled with decision, and then decided to take that leap of faith, and it panned out. So, don't, I guess my advice to anybody in a similar situation as a young worker in a company that you may, work your way up, or when you're in a position that you're really happy with, don't get pigeonholed by what you've been told about yourself early on, because, for whatever reason, over a period of time, I mean, I think for a long time I was disorganized and I was a procrastinator. Although I will tell you about procrastination, it's easy for me to fall into procrastination, when I don't have enough to do. And so that I was kind of, I won't say a victim, but that's the best word I can come up with. I was a victim of that for a really long time. I just didn't have enough to do. And so then your mind starts to wander, and you put things off. I'd like to save stuff up so I can do a chunk of things all at once. I do a little bit of that now because, my life is different. But I pigeonholed myself because that's what I'd been, every review, which I have kept, by the way, every review I ever got from the company in Portland, procrastination and disorganization were the two things that stood out, that I needed to work on. And it turns out that once I got into a company that actually had a lot more to do, we were incredibly busy, incredibly big, incredibly busy. All of a sudden, those things fell by the wayside because I couldn't function without having everything kind of tied up in a bow. I need that completion in order to move forward. And I don't think I ever knew that. And then I spent a lot of time telling myself that I was still that, when in fact I was not at all. And it took a brand new body, a brand new face, a brand new person to come in and work with me for several months to say, no, actually, you're really good at this. This is not your weak spot at all. This is your strength. And you should embrace it. And here's a job that I think you can really embrace it in. And he was dead right. And I can't thank him enough for that. So, be mindful of that. We're not always our best, we're not always our best judge. Sometimes we have that blindfold on and we just don't see it. And it takes somebody else, and I'm sure that a lot of people have those conversations with people where you're talking with somebody and you go, oh, I'm terrible at that. And they say, what? No, you're great at that. And you're like, I am? Since when? And they'll be like, forever. I mean, I can't remember anything specific, but I know I've had that conversation with people, and I've had the same with others where somebody has said to me, well, I'm kind of not this, and I'm like, when I think of this, that I think of you. What do you mean you're not good at that? So I think it's funny how we will retain these descriptions that people have handed us as children or as very young adults, and carry it into our adult life as if this is the way we will always be. And it's just not true. We evolve. We evolve given the circumstances that surround us. And maybe we weren't challenged as youngsters or young adults. And now we're being challenged and we're forced to alter our world. That was a mouthful. Alter our world in order to succeed, which we all want to do in the long run. I mean, I think generally, when you get into something, you kind of want to try to master it, and if we've been told we'll always not master it, or you'll always be terrible at it, and that just loops in your head, what good is that? So, remember to, revisit things. Talk it out with people who know you well, and listen, because sometimes there's the others will know you better than you ever knew yourself. Um, you know, and sometimes your biggest epiphanies will come from someone saying, "No, I think you'd be really good at this." When you've spent your entire life thinking that you would never be good at it. So that's my pep talk for today. So thanks again for stopping by, everyone. Star Flurry coming at you today with a little motivational speech. I hope you are having a wonderful afternoon, and take care. We'll see you all tomorrow. Day 5 tomorrow. Star and Flurry out.